Alright guys, here we are in Houdini, and here we have a sphere, and let's translate this one going up a little bit. Let's move it up maybe 5 units up, zoom out a little bit. Alright, so the first thing for the MPM solver, what we're going to need is a MPM source. So what this does is that creates points in there, so you'll see in a little bit. So we're going to activate point separation, and we can see our points here. The next thing we're going to do is create a container. So it's a MPM container. So inside the MPM source, there's going to be an MPM container at the very top. So we're going to drag that in here. So now the next thing we need is a MPM solver. The first input, we're going to put our source. And the last input here is going to be our container. So here we go. So this is our basic setup. So if we click on play button, we could see that it does our simulation here. So one cool thing that the MPM source has is these presets here. So material presets. So we have snow, soil, mud, concrete, metal, jello, rubber, water, honey, sand. So it's a bunch of different settings, and all these are a little bit of different settings mixed in here. So like if we click on jello, we'll get elastic. We put water, we get liquid, and you have all these different settings that you can mess with here. So if we do like maybe soil, let's see what that looks like. So that looks very similar to the snow one. What we can do is possibly make our sphere a little bit bigger, and then we're going to add a MPM collider. The MPM collider will also need the container, so we'll grab our container and drag it onto the top. Then the next thing we're going to do is connect our middle input from the solver and put it into the collider. So let's add something to collide with. Let's add a tube, and we can move it up and rotate it in space here. Let's make it a little bit bigger, and let's end cap these pieces. So inside the MPM collider, you're going to have different settings. So you have fill. You could also invert. So if you have an object inside of the collider, like maybe like a glass bowl or something like that, you want to put invert and uncheck fill interior. Another thing that you may want to do is if your object's animated, you're going to put animated, and if the geometry is deforming, you put animated deforming. All right, so let's take a look at what this will look like. So let's go back here. So if we template this here and this here. Okay, it's in the way, so let's move this down. All right, and let's rewind and play. So this is our supposed soil. So something else that affects the simulation a lot is the point separation. So the moment you start lowering it down, it gets into a higher resolution. So here we have 0.1. If we try it again, see what the soil looks like. So we already know the collider has different settings that we can fill the interior or invert it to keep the object inside. So we can try that. And then we'll make the radius bigger. And we'll put deforming. Let's put static. All right. And now it's inside of our tube here. So we'll go back. Let's make this back to like one-ish. Just one. And then fill interior, invert SDF. And then we're back to where we were at. We're back to where we were at. Okay. So yeah, and so this is pretty much the setup. It's pretty simple. I love that it's in SOPs. And the other part, we can go up here, and if you have any trouble with the simulation not looking right, you can click on reset simulation, and it'll clear the cache there. And if we go to advanced, here we can add more to the memory. So maybe we put 24 gigabytes, and then we can cache our simulation on the RAM. But I would definitely recommend getting the labs add-on and the SideFX labs add-on, and that comes with SideFX. So like when you first install it, it'll ask you if you want to install it, so you check mark it. So that comes with labs file cache. And what's really cool about this is that we can create wedges here with it. So there's plenty of videos out there that you can go and see how that works, but I would use this one instead of the old one. All right, so let's look at some of the other things that I had set up. So I went through all the different presets. So if we go to MPM, you could see that we have a MPM configures. So each one of these is like a preset network that kind of gets you started. You can go inside and inspect it and see how it was done. So we got like Pancake, Softbody, Building, Jello. We have a bunch of different ones. So I put them here. All right, so this is the first setup, which is the Landslide. Here's the whole setup. You can deep dive inside and see if you can figure out some of those things, but this one's probably the most complicated out of all of them. But we can see that it created a really cool kind of effect where the grass kind of stays more intact and then the dirt is a little softer. That's a cool setup there. You guys can take a look at that. And in this one is interesting because in here we could actually merge two of the MPM sources to get two different kind of setups. So the cool thing about this one is that you can connect two different types of sources with different settings, and all those will get calculated by the MPM solver correctly. So here's the Pancake one. So the first one was rubber, and then the other one was honey, viscous. The next setup here is the pig head setup. This setup uses the point deform, and you freeze. So first you import your pig head, which is the same one as here. Then you freeze by using a time shift and just removing the $F, I think that it has here, and putting just a 1. And then in the last one, you put your MPM solve animation. So then when you retarget with the point deform, you get your original geometry moving with the simulated points. All right. And the next one is the building setup. This one's simple too. They added the building, the MPM source. They added some noise on the stiffness. So E is stiffness. So if you go to the MPM source, you can see that stiffness has a little E right next to it. So that's what this is. They added some noise on the stiffness and then remapped it with a 0.1, fit 0.1. And then we take a look at that. Oh, the ball that's moving actually is another MPM source, but they added a velocity. So they have here negative 30, negative 25, and 30. So that's what kind of throws that source to the side to hit the building. So that's that setup there. And then the next one, I think it was called like Jello Party or something like that. So for MPM Jello Party, that's this setup here. So they have a bunch of cubes, scattered them, rotated them, random rotations. And then we're getting a bound that's just going to get the bounding box of the cubes of the entire thing here. And then using that as the container. And then here in Jello, they got the Jello preset. So if we take a look at that, pretty cool. Moving forward, this one is the metal rip. So in here, we got the grid, the MPM source. It grabs the ends. Here we have the distance to frame. So this creates a distance attribute here. So if we check here, we have dist, and then in here we pin to animation and then distance. So if the distance is less than 0.232. So if the distance is less than this, then this pin is 1. So we can visualize it. If we create a visualizer here, and we can use this. Pretty cool. And then pin to animation. So we can see that that's where it's pinning. So if I change this here, put 4, you can see it's pinned even further. So that's how they did that setup there. And then there's a sphere, has a little bit of noise on it, and then it's being animated. So it in the collision type, they put animated rig, and that's what causes it to move forward. And then MPM Solver, here we go. And now we could see that that piece ripped like that metal. So that was the metal preset with behavior to chunky and then max relax iterations to 250. So that's a pretty cool setup there as well. The next setup is the Snowball. So again, they have 2 different sources. They got the one for the Snowball itself. You got the slide, and they added some initial state here, velocity on the X. So X is going this way. And then the slope itself is also a collider, MPM Solver. And now we can see, let's reset our viewport. Not sure why it's not showing up. Let's do a fluid, particle fluid surface, and then put 0.05, 0.02. Okay, leave it like that. Remove wireframe. Oh, I see. There it is. Okay, now we can see it. There's the setup. So that's the Snowball one. Then we got the sand one, which is the animated Craig. Got our sandbox here, our floor. We're turning that into points for MPM. And then in here, we have some sort of ramp with Vex code. And now each point is different. And then we're copying these rocks here to the copied points. So this actually randomizes the rotation, I think. All right, so then we got the rotation in there. And then we merge these 2 back and we can see it better. So that's cool. Then the other setup they have here is a wheel spinning. So it's like a, so let's merge the wheel so you can see what I'm talking about. And that would be the collider right here. So that's that. The different colors, again, it's 2 different MPM sources, and they're using a, so we're cutting it here with possibly a noise of some sort. Yeah. So VDB, then we added some noise, then converted it back, and then we got the original one. We combined it and we did the difference of that, SDF difference, and then we named that water. So that's like the water preset, changed it to blue. Same thing, the opposite, added some noise and viscosity, and then brought everything back. So here they have the wheel, then the wheel just spins in one direction, and then they offsetted the pivot, and then now you have another rotation there. Converted that into the MPM collider, and then they time shifted so it slows down. And then again, there's a bound for the entire box here, and everything's linked back into the MPM. Then everything's linked back to the MPM solver. And the final one is the wine glass one. So that one is same. We have MPM source, and in this one we got 2 colliders. So they merged the collider of the first glass and then the second glass, merging those 2 together. And here we have just the geometry on the inside, converted that, and then we have our fluid inside here. So then now when we look at everything, so we can merge our wine glass, and let's see, let's do this one, alpha is equal to CHF alpha amount. This so I could just see the glass here. There you go. So now we could see the glasses here. And it's like a simple way to do fluids. It's not as flexible, but it's you can do simple fluids with it. All right, so we'll go to the final setup, which is starts with our tube here, which is our one noodle. We're moving it up. We're match sizing it. And that was because I was moving this around. This just keeps it in place at the bottom. And then we got a cube here. We're moving it up. We're ISO offsetting it. We don't need the bound. We're scattering some points, 45 points. We're randomizing the orient, and then we're copying 2 points, and then match sizing that, and then moving it up just a little bit. Then we create our MPM source. We put Jello. Then we got our box, which at first it's going to be big, and then it's going to shrink down into a package. So I added the poly bevel, so there's like a more roundness when it squishes it in, and then match sizing that, moving it up, and then we have our collider, and then we have that in invert SDF. So all together our noodles fall down and they shrink into the package. And then here I did a particle fluid surface that puts them back into mesh. And then I'm freezing it at the time shift of 77 frames. And then this whole setup is the vellum setup for the bag. So we got the grid, we remeshed it. We got the 2 pieces, we got pins for the edges. And then we're using the first pins here, grouping it. We got the vellum cloth, vellum weld, and there you go. So everything's kind of packaged in. Then we did a vellum post process. And then in here, I just had an alpha just to kind of mess around, time shifting it, did a UV quick shade. So this here is actually a chop network here. So I designed the image in Affinity Designer, and then I imported that in. So here inside of the new cops, we have the background, which is just alpha. We got our label, we mirrored it, and then this is the final piece for it. And then we have an alpha channel to use for that. So then now if we look at both of them together, this is our noodle package. Then we go into Solaris. We brought in our noodles. We got our bag. We got a floor as a grid. In here, we created our materials. So we got the noodles, just standard surface. In the bag, here we have the regular image, and here we have the alpha. And then we're using the mix here. We use an extract and an invert. And then we're mixing in these 2 shaders here. So now if we go into, we assign the materials, so everything's there. Put in our dome light. We got the noodles in there. And then we got an area light. And we got our camera. And that's pretty much the whole setup for everything. This is only scratching the surface of what MPM Solver can do. But at least now you kind of get an idea of how to get started and start with just some simple scenes, or even grab some of the configures that SideFX has provided. I wanted to show you something real quick because I had some issues with the meshing, and the way I was able to go around that. I'm not really sure how to do this in the options for the MPM solver yet, or the MPM setup. So what I ended up doing is, when I have the clones here, I put an attribute that has color. We're getting color here, a randomized color. And then when we solve it, all the different pieces come in different colors. So then from there, so what I did here is I added an attribute wrangle, but what I wanted it to do was grab the color and put it into a primitive group. Then what I did is that I put a name, and then I got the attribute noodles. That's the name that I put. And then I put my group mask, which was created here by this And so for each different color, it created a different point group. So now here I have the different groups, and then that reads that. So the group over here is called CD underscore, and then the name of the, so what I ended up doing is just putting CD underscore star, and then just grabs everything and then pretty much renames it. So as soon as I was able to create an attribute out of it, the for each can actually detect the different pieces. So then in here, I just did the meshing for it. So if you look at the pieces by themselves, if I put single, you can see all the different pieces that are going to iterate this process here of the meshing. So we go in here and then turn off single pass, and then we got all of our meshing. So now instead of, there's still going to be some parts that look like they're meshed together, but it's just one piece that got meshed together. It's not like a whole mesh of all the different ones meshing together. So you have a little bit more control that way as opposed to doing it this way. So in here, so you could see in the top here, it's meshing, but in this setup, is actually not. It's actually overlapping it. So those two different setups create these different parts. But yeah, that was the tip that I wanted to tell you before I go. So yeah, just to reiterate, we send in a randomized color through our copy to points, and then we solve it. We get our colors in here, and then through this node, our colors are grouped, and then in the group we're creating an attribute from the group, and then now we can actually select the different pieces. All right, if you guys have any questions, just leave them in the comments, and let me know what you guys think about this new MPM solver. I think it's really powerful, it's really easy to set up, and I'm hoping to use it soon again, and I'll see you guys on the next video.